When Carl texted me early that morning, informing me that he was taking Karina to the hospital with a seizure, I knew what to do. I grabbed my coat, my keys, my wallet, and I was out the door. I got all the way to the Jeep before I remembered. The hospital would not let me in. I couldn't do what I knew I should do. I couldn't show up. How often these months has that been mine and your great frustration? The inability to show up like we normally do. This morning's reading from Isaiah. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me to bind up the brokenhearted, to comfort those who mourn, who preach good news to the captives and to those who are oppressed. That was read at my ordination 38 years ago. I knew how to do that. I knew what it meant to be pastor. I just needed to show up. But these days, that's easier said than done. It has been a time of great frustration and also a time of internal resistance. And then I remembered a story I once heard a long, long time ago, back in Rome. There was a young girl, faithful and devout. She heard of the needs of the Christians that were living in the catacombs for fear. She wished to show up, to bring food to them. But as she began to work on that, she realized that she was limited by the amount of food she could carry in one hand and the candle in the other to make her way through the catacombs. And so creativity hit. And she strapped candles to her head that she might have two free hands to carry that much more food. Her name was Lucia. And on this day, we remember her and her innovations, and the call for us to seek new ways of showing up. And we have discovered many of those. But even more so for me has been in the midst of this, and perhaps despite this, I have recognized where God shows up so much more clearly these days. How he shows up in the midst of prayer, the midst of new communities forming online, the ways he uses others to do my work. Never again will a chance encounter with a friend or parishioner on the street or at a store go unrecognized for what it was. God showing up. Never had Christmas cards meant so much. Never has a glimpse on FaceTime or on a Zoom meeting brought so much recognition and thanksgiving. I have recognized more clearly the presence of God in my life because I can't be the one to show up. I recognize that God does and continues to do so, even as I seek new ways to show up myself. And one of the great learnings in all of this is that I have discovered generosity. I've always seen myself as a generous person, but Perhaps my motivation was not the best. But these days, it just is so easy to reach out to others and to show my thanks for God showing up. Where has God shown up for you in the last 24 hours? I invite you to take a moment each day to pause and to explore that question. And then to explore your response. Unexpected and mysterious is the gentle word of grace, ever loving and sustaining is the peace of God's embrace. If we falter in our courage, and we doubt what we have known, God is faithful to console us, as a mother tends her own. In a momentary meeting of eternity and time, Mary learned that she would carry both the mortal and divine. Then she learned of God's compassion, of Elizabeth's great joy, and she ran to greet the woman who would recognize her boy. We are called to ponder mystery and await the coming Christ, to embody God's compassion for each fragile human life. God is with us in our longing to bring healing to the earth, while we watch with joy and wonder for the promised Savior's birth.